Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to another Reddit Stories video. You guys continue to ask for more and more of these videos, so guess what? I'll keep giving you more and more of these videos. So sit back, relax, and if you're new here, subscribe. It's the channel's goal to be at 250,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I think we can do it, so please subscribe. And alright, anyways, let's get into the first story. Unsettling encounter in the Sierras. This story is, unfortunately, true. I've changed names and ages slightly for privacy. I grew up in the Sierra Nevadas. It's a really beautiful part of the world with sprawling pines, rugged mountains, and crystalline lakes. I wasn't big on camping, but I spent a good chunk of my childhood weekends hiking with family and friends and spent many summer days tubing on the lake. The summer that I was 16, about 10 years ago, now my cousin, Celia, had come home from her first year of college, and her boyfriend, Jay, was visiting to meet her family and friends. Jay, like many tourists, wanted to go on a hike with lake views. Celia and I decided to take him on one of our favorites, a moderate hike through the woods on a gentle incline that peaks at hollow in the trees, overlooking Lake Tahoe below. Jay had some hiking experience, albeit in less rugged terrain, and we thought this hike would be a fun challenge with the spectacular views he wanted. It is an in and out trail that takes about 2 to 3 hours to the top and 2 to 3 hours back down. There are some smaller trails that branch off and offer steep inclines or windy paths down towards the lake. The three of us set off on the hike on the first Saturday of his visit. The trail isn't the easiest to find, but it's really popular with locals because of the view and general lack of tourists. It was mislabeled on the most popular trails website at the time, so it was hard to find it if you didn't know where to look. We passed only a couple of other hikers, mostly granola-type couples with camelback water backpacks hiking with their dogs. We made it to the top in good time and enjoyed our lunches overlooking the lake. Jay was appropriately impressed by the views and spent a lot of time taking pictures. In between selfies and bites of sandwiches, we mostly just relaxed and got to know each other. After about an hour of relaxing, we heard a scream in the distance, specifically a mountain lion scream. If you've never heard a mountain lion scream, it's really unnerving. It sounds a bit like a very loud, terrified woman, letting out a blood-curdling shriek of terror. YouTube it, it's truly a horrible sound. This was not good because when a mountain lion screams, it's either part of a mating ritual or two male lions are fighting. Either way, hearing one scream meant there were multiple mountain lions and close. The bears in the Sierras are softies, but the mountain lions will attack you. They'll attack your pets. They'll even been known to attack bikers. There's safety in numbers, but even 3 is risky if you're talking about a hungry lion. Jay was really freaked out. There weren't big predators roaming around where he's from, and the thought of an animal large enough and willing enough to eat him was off-putting. Celia and I were wary but not alarmed. Between the natural disasters that frequently occurred in the region, such as earthquakes, wildfires, mega blizzards, and the sometimes deadly wild animals that got close to town, we were fairly unshakable. We had seen plenty of bears and snakes on hikes, and sometimes encountering critters is the price you pay to enjoy the natural beauty. It also wasn't the first time we had heard mountain lions, and we had both seen them before, albeit mostly from the safety of a cabin or a house. There was also an incident where, as kids, we laid out some expensive steak in my backyard in the hopes of luring a mountain lion to take pictures of it. It did not work, and my mother was unhappy about the steaks. Anyway, Celia and I told Jay that it was fine, but that we need to pack it up and get back down the mountain. We packed up the leftovers of our lunches and took off at a brisk pace back down the mountain. About 40 minutes into the hike back, Jay realized that he had forgot his phone at the lookout in his rush to leave. Of course. After a brief back and forth between Jay and Celia, I don't need it back that badly. Jay, it is all of your pictures from the spring break trip, not to mention you're a broke college student. Yes, you need to go back. We decided to go back and get it. Well, we decided that Celia and Jay would hike back up to retrieve his phone, and I would stay there, on the trail, alone, to warn any other potential hikers that there are lions in the area. I was mostly worried about those hikers with their off-leash dogs and wanted to prevent a wandering lab from getting mauled. This was obviously not ideal for any of us, but seemed like the best choice at the time. I found a nice rock to sit on in the shade just off the trail and was going through the pictures we took on my phone and playing Temple Run. There was no cell service or internet, but I knew they'd be back soon. Celia and Jay had been gone for around 50 minutes when I heard the scream again. And it was hard to tell, but I thought it was closer than before. I started to get pretty nervous. Being in groups is far preferable when dealing with mountain lions, and I felt like perfect bait sitting there alone on the woods. About 20 minutes after that, I heard the scream again, and there was now zero doubt that it was closer. It sounded like it was coming from up the trail, towards where Celia and Jay would be coming down. Very soon, I sincerely hoped. Logically, I knew that lions don't scream when hunting. They are quiet. If a lion was hunting me, I wouldn't know it. The screaming meant it was doing something else, something not feeding related. That knowledge did not make me less nervous. I became hyper alert, whipping my head around every time I heard a noise or thought I saw a flash of movement. I turned my flashlight on even though it was the middle of the day. I got off my rock to stand in the middle of the trail to have visibility up, down, and in the trees on each side of the trail. A couple of minutes after that, I heard it again extremely close by. By this point, I had full goosebumps and a pit in my stomach, a complete sense of dread. I looked around and tried to find the best place for me to stand, back covered in case of the worst. I decided to wedge myself up against a tree next to the rock I had been sitting on. I had good visibility up and down the trail, still and into the trees across the trail. I continued scanning around, focusing on the trail where I thought the screams were coming from. Suddenly, I saw something, standing still, 20 feet up the trail. A couple feet off of it was a man. He was completely naked. He was filthy. He was skinny. And he was just standing there, looking at me. I didn't even hear him come up. It sounds cliche, but it really was like he appeared out of nowhere, especially since I had been focusing on looking for the lion in that direction. If you don't know where you're going, it's easy to get lost in the woods around here. The weather can change quickly, and people panic and get more lost in their attempts to find their cars. And it doesn't take long, being alone, lacking food and water, in the wilderness, to make people a little disoriented, a little crazy. The infamous Donner Party incident happened maybe an hour away from where I was standing. My first thought was that the man was probably a lost hiker, and judging by how dirty he was, he'd been lost a long time. He needed help. I had heard about people with hypothermia stripping off all of their clothes and thought maybe that was what happened. Now, this took place during the summer, and there's no way that someone would get hypothermia in July. But that didn't occur to me until later. I started walking towards him, asking if he's okay. I suddenly got this feeling of wrongness. I don't know how else to describe it, but my feeling is dread tripled. The hair stood up on my neck. I stopped in my tracks, maybe 15 feet away now, and had the overwhelming urge to run away. It seemed wrong. It felt wrong. He looked wrong in a way I can't quite articulate. Instead of wanting to help him, I was absolutely terrified of him. I asked again if he's okay. He looked at me, then opened his mouth wide and screamed. Not a normal scream. He screamed just like a mountain lion, a high-pitched, keening shriek that made my blood run cold. It occurred to me that we were probably hearing him the whole time. It was the single most terrifying thing I have ever witnessed. I started screaming too. I was preparing to run away, down the trail, I suppose, but also really did not want to turn my back on him. Suddenly, he closed his mouth, turned around, and ran into the woods very quickly. He disappeared into the trees, but the feeling of wrongness was still with me. I felt like I was going to throw up. I considered bolting down the trail to get away, but decided to wait for Celia and Jay, who luckily arrived within 10 or 15 minutes. I told them what happened, and we decided to call it into the Rangers when we got service. Celia and I had seen some odd things in our lives, her more than me, but she turned white as sheet when I told them what happened. I guess they didn't hear anything at all on the way down. I've always been deeply unsettled since the incident. Did I see a mentally ill lost hiker who really needed my help? Or did I see something else? Celia insists it was a skinwalker or something similar, something malevolent and inhuman, mimicking the call of a mountain lion and stalking us down the mountain. And that was a great story, but now I'm going to pass it off to Poi. He makes very similar videos to me, but I'll be passing it off to him for the next story. So yeah, now on to Poi.
Hey guys, it's Poi. Be sure to go subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to hit 100k by the end of the year. I do the same kind of stuff that Snook does. Anyways, let's get into my story. The first and the only hitchhiker I will ever pick up. So last Friday, I, a 25-year-old female, had a little time to kill before picking up my kids from school, and it was a gorgeous day, so I decided to spend some time cruising back roads in my hometown, small, rural, listening to music. I passed this guy with his thumb out trying to catch a ride, and I almost picked this guy up. He looked to be about late 30s, early 40s, carrying a fishing pole and a backpack. Pretty innocent looking, I guess, but see, I'm a lone female, and I've been taught with the hundreds of hitchhiker gone wrong stories that you just keep driving. So I kept driving, and as I'm driving, I'm having this internal dialogue of guilt about my decision not to pick up the guy. You know, if I was hitchhiking, I'd hope someone would pick me up, and I mean, really, what's the worst that can happen? That, mixed with my new self-improvement goal of doing the things that scare me as often as possible, led me to the conclusion that if when I looped back around and he was still walking, I would pick him up. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, he was still there. I was feeling a little nervous pulling over getting him, but what was I going to do? Peel out because he was trying to get in my vehicle? As soon as he gets in, I realize I have probably made a horrible mistake. Number one, because he seemed like he was tweaking balls and smelled god-awful. Number two, because this dude was looking at me like I was a feast and he was starved. I didn't realize exactly how rattled I was with my decision until he asked me for a smoke and my hands were shaking so bad I barely pulled one out of my pack without breaking it. Driving made it easier to hide my nerves, but I was internally freaking out and trying to decide how I would beat this guy's ass if he tried anything. His name is Wayne, and he lives about 5 minutes from where I picked him up. Meanwhile, he's telling me how he lost his license due to DUIs and how he's living in this house with an old man. He tried to get him to come with them, but he didn't want to come out, etc. He's also trying to talk me into hanging out at said house with him and come over and drink with him the next day. When I finally get him to the destination, it's a little shack-like thing that's surrounded by all these junk cars. He gets out and he's trying to get me to come inside with him. I tell him no and leave. I'm feeling really relieved and a little proud that I faced a fear of mine. Fast forward to Monday, my instructor says, "Holy crap, apparently someone got murdered down the so-and-such road. Do you know anyone down that way?" I say, "Wow, you know, that's really ironic. I took a hitchhiker down that road Friday. His name is Wayne, I think." Probably wasn't 15 minutes later when I see old Wayne's picture on Facebook saying the TPI has picked him up for stabbing someone to death at the very house I dropped him off at on Friday. Graphic information of how he stabbed him in the lungs and the victim bled out in that little shack. And the old man he was living with doesn't even exist. I swear I'll never pick up another hitchhiker in my life.
And thanks for Poi for coming out and collabing on this video. Let me know if you'd like to see him back on the channel or any other collabs you might want to see in the future, or if I should even continue doing collabs. Let me know down below. I'm curious on what you guys think. But anyways, on to the next story. Someone walked up to our tent while dispersed camping. My boyfriend, Jason, 27 male, and I, 23 female, went on a month-long camping trip to multiple states. Everything had been going really well until October 9th. We decided to ditch a campground reservation and randomly pitch our tent near Alabon Basin within the Uinta Mountains, Alta, Utah, not far off the Secrete Lake trailhead. We parked our car around 3 p.m. at the Alabon Basin campground, which was closed for season. Admittedly, it was a little tense because this was our first dispersed camping attempt and we had no proper backpacking gear. Until arrival, we realized the area we wanted to pitch our tent was about 2 miles uphill. At this point, we started to express regret as we had a planned campsite in Nephi, Utah, that we decided to skip on a whim. After grumping around a bit and having a large lunch to avoid packing food, we packed our backpacks with the best gear we had to get through the night as it was going to be 25 degrees Fahrenheit. We set out up the trail, seeing the occasional family or couple heading down the mountain. As we trudged on, we both started to feel strange, as if we did not really even know why we were doing this. As if we should have just gotten a hotel instead of trying to play backpackers for the night. But we both felt like we had something to prove, so we continued. Fast forward, we made it up to the Secrete Lake. Totally empty, so nothing like the pictures, disappointing, and eerie. Whatever, we kept hiking up and up in an attempt for seclusion and flat land when we stumble across a decent space. I see a small cave in the distance and point it out to Jason to deliberate if it's a hell no kind of situation. But after he checked it out, he says it seemed like a small animal crawl space. No biggie. We set up as nightfall was quickly approaching, play some cards, bundle up, and decide to go to bed early around 8:30 p.m. as we plan to leave ASAP in the morning, maybe 5 a.m. We both dwindle slowly, and after what feels like 30 minutes, I woke up abruptly at 11:24 p.m. I woke up with a feeling I've never experienced before. I woke up wide awake, scared but unprovoked, and as if there was no way in hell I was going to fall back asleep. When I always sleep through the night, Jason was asleep, so I let him be and just lie there, alert, trying to listen to anything I could hear, which was nothing, very silent. Around 12 a.m., Jason woke up stirring, much to my delight as I did not want to feel alone anymore. I told him I could not sleep, but he suggested I just rest my eyes as we were leaving early in the morning. I agreed, initially not wanting to be a baby and say I was very scared. This was a very short-lived, as Jason could not fall back asleep himself, and we ended up laying there together trying to sleep when I ended up blurting out I was scared. We agreed it's fine for us to stick it out through the night as it was now approaching 2:30 a.m. and we had a small axe and a pellet gun for protection, so I did not want to be frightened. Not even 5 minutes later, we were still wide awake and Jason's head perks up so fast, my head jumped out of my chest and I whispered, "What is it?" He replied, "Listen," and I shit you not, we distinctly hear the sound of gravel crunching under boots as if someone walked up to our tent, stopped, and then walked to my side of the tent. I felt the blood drain out of my face in an instant. In real time, this all occurred in no more than 10 seconds, but my mind flashed a million thoughts, and for a millisecond, I was convinced it was a ranger coming to tell us we could not camp here, so I called out, "Hello," my brain entirely sure I heard human footsteps. Within 2 to 3 seconds of hearing the footsteps, Jason grabbed the gun and bursted out of the tent for any chance to confront this person. As I knew, he heard exactly what I had heard. Nothing. There was nothing there. We heard something walk up so clearly, but nothing walked away. Hardly exchanging 2 words, we packed up our stuff, looking over our shoulders terrified, feeling watched, and booked it down the mountain with only moonlight guiding our way, too scared to turn on our flashlights. This was the worst 20 to 30 minutes of my life. Half expecting it to look over my shoulder to find someone following us, when we made it to our car, we locked the doors and started the descent out of the mountains, almost speechless and scared out of our minds. At this point, we reached town about 3:30 a.m. and slept in a well-lit parking lot of a grocery store. We have obviously since discussed what happened that night, and we are both haunted by the sound of those footsteps. And thank you for watching this video. This was a shorter video, so please let me know down below. Do you prefer shorter videos, longer videos, especially for these Reddit? I don't know how many stories to put into them. I don't know if, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 plus is better. Let me know if you want like a 10-minute video, an hour-long video, and also let me know if you'd like to see more collabs in the future. And subscribe and like the video. It helps the channel out a lot. And until next time, see ya.